Come one, come all, come on down to Uncle Terry's Teleporters. We're celebrating Meet Your Match coming out with a sale on teleporters. That's right, all level 1 teleporters are now 60% off. That's right, 60% off, you heard it here. Used to cost 125 metal to make a teleporter. Now it only costs 50 metal. That's right, 50 metal. Teleporters are so useful. If you've never used a teleporter before, then come on down and get one for not free, for 60% off, for 50 metal only. Teleporters, they're so useful. You can use them to teleport people to the front lines of the dang map. It's so good. You can use them on Dust Bowl. You can use them on Payload. You can use them on CP Steel even if you wanted to. Here's some people who bought the teleporters for 60% off and they were really satisfied with it. Here they are.
Oh, these teleporters, they're the best I've ever used. They get me there. They're right on time.
I was scraping by day until I bought this teleporter. Now I've got enough money left to buy food for my family. It's amazing. I would recommend this to anybody.
But wait, that's not all. If you use the Eureka effect, you'll get that teleporter reduced cost. Now it's 80% less and not 60%. That's right, with the Eureka effect, your teleporters cost 25 dang metal to build and 100 metal to upgrade. If that's not a deal, then you can slap my fucking ass. So come on down to Uncle Terry's Teleporters. We got teleporters for 60% off, and with the Eureka effect, they're 80% off, and you can build them for 200 metal all the way up to level 3. It's pretty epic. And by the way, scouts, stop taking my teleporter. Stop pushing medics off the teleporter. It's rude, and it makes me want to slap you in the head.
How do I skip the ad? I don't know. It's not working.
Dispenser going up. Well, I guess that'll do.
Hey, it's me, and boy oh boy, a lot has happened while I've been gone. Meet Your Match, the official TF2 matchmaking update finally came out, and there's a lot to talk about, so I've decided to just do a bunch of videos this week about specific subjects surrounding the hype, the controversy, the confusion, the outrage, and the celebrations. But before we get into anything like that, I've got a civic duty on my hands, and I'm not talking about the shotgun skin, I'm talking about the fact that Engineer was buffed. Again, that's right, Engineer has gotten a few changes to the class and some unlockable weapons, all of which are more or less positive, which is almost a complete opposite from what happened to him in Tough Break. Rest in peace, straight upgrade Jag. So I'm pretty stoked to talk about what got changed and why. Starting with the first change, level 1 teleporters now cost 50 metal instead of 125. I don't need to tell you guys that this is the best change for the Engineer from this update. You've heard the commercials. 60% less metal being spent on teleporters is an insanely bold buff for the Engineer as a class, but it is very necessary for the fast-paced competitive matchmaking that was added in the very same update. So imagine this, you're playing a 5 CP map like Foundry or Snakewater, which are some of the more popular game modes in competitive, and you want to play Engineer. Well, other than building a sentry gun on last, there's not much that you can do on a map where the spawn locations move forward or backward every time a control point changes hands. So if you spent a total of 250 metal on just a level 1 teleporter, and then your team caps the point, moving your spawn up to a different location. Congratulations, you just wasted a whole lot of time and metal on building what will most likely never ever be used by your team. So naturally, most engineers who recognize that building a teleporter on 5 CP maps is usually a huge waste of time have been refraining from building teleporters at all when focusing on locking down choke points with sentry guns and fighting scouts and soldiers with the short circuit. I'm assuming Valve must have seen this and decided to just go ahead and make teleporters the cheapest building in the game by far. So now it only costs 100 metal in total to build a teleporter entrance and exit, which is perfect because even if you build a teleporter when you roll out, you still have enough metal to build a mini sentry or a dispenser even without having to pick up any metal along the way. So this is honestly one of the best changes to Engineer in years because it speeds the game up, making Engineer more viable in the one game mode where he's clearly the weakest, and it encourages new players who might have been attracted to that powerful sentry gun building to spare some metal to build a supportive building. I mean, it's only 50 metal, why wouldn't you build a teleporter at this point? Alright, well, that's the best thing the Engineer got in the update. It's all pretty underwhelming from here, but I'm still gonna give my 2 cents on it anyway. The next change is the Widowmaker. Damage increased by 10% when attacking the same target as your sentry. Okay, so this is the most useless change I've ever seen since they gave the Solemn Vow slower swing speed. Like, why? The Widowmaker is already perfectly balanced. It rewards you for hitting meat shots at the cost of relying on your metal count. It didn't need to be changed at all, let alone given a minuscule damage boost on extremely specific situations. 10% extra damage literally doesn't matter. Say you're doing 90 damage, which is a pretty solid slab of meat there. Well, if your sentry gun is also shooting that person while you hit that shot, you'll do 99 damage in addition to the damage that they're already taking from your damn sentry gun. Do you know how much damage a sentry gun does per second? It does a lot. So 9 extra damage isn't going to make or break you in that situation. Your enemy is dead either way. Never have I been shooting at someone who is also taking damage from my sentry gun and thought to myself, I wish I was doing even more damage to this poor gamer. Like, this change makes me think that Valve saw that people using the Widowmaker weren't building sentry guns enough and were instead spending their metal on killing people. And sure, like if you're just looking at data from games where someone is just messing around and only practicing their aim, because the Widowmaker is a fantastic aim practice weapon, but what engineer is not building a sentry gun, like Widowmaker or not? Like, I just don't get it. It just adds to my theory that Valve doesn't play their own video game and just reads statistics on a chart, which is a subject for a video later down the line. But until then, we've got a few more engineer weapons to cover, such as the Eureka effect. Reduced 50% less metal from dispensers and pickups to 20%, and added teleporters cost 50% less metal. So Valve has heard my call and given the honorary worst wrench a long overdue buff. Awesome news. I actually really like what they've done with it. They've continued down the road of this wrench being more of a tool or an extra accessory than an actual long-term building companion. Lessening that penalty of having the metal you pick up from the map is a great way to encourage more people to use this thing, but at the same time, it still kind of messes with your math if you're not used to it. But honestly, with the new feature that they added, having the cost for teleporters, I think this wrench can be used for some really clever rollouts and setups now. Your teleporters only cost 25 metal to build when you use the Eureka effect, which is pretty crazy already considering we thought 50 metal was cheap. But the real kicker is that your teleporters also only take 100 metal to upgrade from level to level. This means that instead of dedicating 400 total metal to upgrade a teleporter to level 3, you only have to spend 200 metal, basically only one full ammo pack. Pair that with the classic ability to teleport to your spawn and tele-exit, and this wrench is the obvious choice for pre-game setup time. Right now, at the time I'm making this video, the Eureka effect allows you to build and upgrade teleporters for half the metal, but there is an interesting feature that I'm almost hoping isn't just some silly bug. When you switch away from the Eureka effect after building a 25 metal teleporter, your tele will retain its ability to be upgraded with only 100 metal per level, no matter what you switch to. So essentially you can use the Eureka effect to place a teleporter and then switch to the Jag, a more efficient upgrading wrench, to finish the job for half the price and at higher speed. So with this new simpler version of the Jag effect rollout, you can effectively have all 3 of your buildings at level 3 before the gates open because you're easily saving 200 metal. Pretty cool stuff, and I love that it encourages even more wrench combos, but I'm worried that it's a bug and not a feature. I actually really like having these little secret techniques like this, so please Valve, keep this feature, bug type thing in the game. It makes Engineer a little more interesting and complex. The next change that they implemented in Meet Your Match was for the short circuit. Base projectile attack is minus 10 metal, hit or miss, and then add minus 5 metal for each projectile destroyed. Basically, this change is a balanced decision that makes the short circuit a little more sensical when it comes to your metal to projectile trade-offs. Before, the short circuit's right click spent 15 metal whether you deleted no projectiles, 1 projectile, or 100 projectiles. Because of this, engineers could theoretically get away with quote-unquote value circuits where you could spend the same metal you spend on deleting no sticky bombs or rockets for the same cost of deleting 1,000,000 rockets or an 8 sticky bomb trap. So right now, after this change, when you fire the short circuit, and keep in mind I'm talking about the right click feature, not the absolutely useless 2-volt taser with the range of a toothpick that is the primary fire for this thing, you spend 10 metal when you fire it and delete no projectiles. And then for every projectile you delete after that, it adds 5 metal onto the cost. So if you delete 1 projectile, you spend 15 metal. If you delete 2 projectiles, you spend 20 metal, 3 projectiles, 25 metal, and so on and so forth. This system makes total sense, and honestly, it's kind of more of a buff than anything, even though Valve added in the patch notes that it's only a buff situationally, which they're kind of right about, but I find myself using the short circuit to delete single rockets at most. Sometimes I'll erase a trap with a few stickies, but for the most part, I use the short circuit to shut down jumpy scouts and finding cloak spies, and now it costs a little less to do both those things, so yay for me. Sorry, scouts and spies, I'm killing you with a deal. Last weapon change we got here, the Pomson 6000. Fix an exploit with shooting through your own buildings and I don't know, made it do more consistent damage. Whatever, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. This is hands down my least favorite weapon for the engineer. It's really wonky with the way that projectiles work, extremely irritating to play against, it just doesn't stand up the consistency of other engineer shotguns, and it just looks like a pile of garbage. The only reason I could ever see anyone using this weapon is if they wanted to have an option for range to combat pesky snipers in the distance. Don't peek sniper sightlines in the first place. You're doing 50 damage very slowly while they're doing 150 damage in 2 simultaneous clicks for heck's sake, or just trying to be an annoying douche and draining the medic's ubercharge for little effort. Don't do that. It's douchey, almost as douchey as using the reserve shooter on Pyro. There used to be the exploit where if you shot the projectile through your buildings, the beam would be invisible, making this thing even more annoying to play against since you sometimes couldn't even see what was hitting you, but that was a bug, so it was bound to be fixed, no surprise there. But making it do more damage and keeping the lame things about it on the weapon, like removing 2 classes' primaries abilities for very little effort on the engineer's part, is another great example to go towards the theory that Valve developers don't play TF2. What makes people not play with this weapon is that it's annoying and weird, so please, next time just straight up remove the cloak and uber draining thing and make it do something else. I don't know, maybe bring back the penetration thing. Yeah, the Thompson actually used to penetrate players like how the Python currently does. That way it can have a clear use, spamming it down these long corridors with lots of people to do massive amounts of collective damage to clumped up enemies. It really should be a shotgun version of the Bison in my opinion. I don't know if I would ever choose it over the other primaries if they did that, but at least I wouldn't feel like the fun police when I hit a medic with it 4 times in a row when I wasn't even aiming at them. Like, maybe someday, Valve. Maybe someday. Anyway, that's all of the changes for the engineer. I could acknowledge some other changes that I liked, such as the spy speed buff. Believe it or not, I actually think that's a pretty good idea. It makes it easier for spies to just do their jobs, like getting behind enemy lines while invisible and being able to backstab more people who are running away from them. I also think the quick fix nerf was pretty decent, although I still feel like it's a little too good in 6v6, but it's not an automatic must-use for medic now, since you can heal scouts just as effectively with any medigun now. However, there are so many changes that were completely unnecessary and irrelevant, as well as a blaring lack of nerfs to overpowered weapons that almost seemed completely obvious, and yet, no, the Criticola is still one of the best scout unlocks for 6v6. Valve really doesn't know what changes are actually needed for TF2 in my opinion, but that's going to have to be a subject for another video that you will see very soon. So thanks for watching, and I will talk to you nieces and nephews next time. Bye-bye.